Here in Atlanta, the action never dies, and today was absolutely no exception. Without even being able to set up, I hop off my bike to see the tail end of some menace train that I knew I was missing before I even got up here. But behind it was this unexpected CSX local with, would you believe it, a Dash 8 leading it. Despite being a Dash 8, it appears this thing was built in April of 1993, but regardless, it was still pretty cool to see that an engine this old is still around leading trains out on the railroad. As our Norfolk Southern train in the distance comes to a stop for whatever reason, the CSX train continues on its way, and we get to see the remainder of the contest, which is just your every normal day train. We got boxcars, tankers, hoppers, gondolas carrying whatever, and more tank cars and hoppers. Just your everyday local. This train actually ended up stopping maybe a mile from where I was at right now. So even though I could have gone down and seen the Dash 8 again, I elected to instead go to one of my other bridges for some of the Norfolk Southern action that was lined to come through. Back at the bridge, we can see the NS train once again stopped here. I don't know why they stopped it. And another Norfolk Southern train in intermodal that is also coming in to stop. There's a lot of stop and go action that goes along in these parts. Evidently, this train was stopping for something. And until then, I was just getting footage of it coming in just for footage's sake. It didn't take long for this train to stop or for the train that it was stopping for to arrive. I didn't know what it was or what was on it, but I switched to the other side of the bridge, had my camera out, and was ready for filming. And as soon as it rounded the curve, I looked at the cab and I realized, oh my goodness, that's a red mate. So I quickly shifted to the left to get a better view of the locomotive body as it passed by me. And wouldn't you know it, the crew was friendly. Isn't that always nice to see? This is what I like to call a certified Atlanta magic moment, where I can go out not knowing what is coming and somehow still see a special unit leading a train that people on my home line would have been waiting for like 3 hours for. And here it was, just there. I don't know the ID, and I don't know where it was going, and frankly, I do not care. There are so many trains that come through here that I just know that there's something coming. I look on my tracker, I see green, I go to green and I fill. And that's what we'll be doing for the remainder of this race. fun times we have. After this train, the intermodal that had come in and stopped was immediately lined into Inman, so I said screw it, I might as well go to Howell Y and film the power again. For those of you who are unlearned or are goofy to have watched Train Talk yet, the two engines leading this train are a AC44C6M and an ES44AC. And if you see enough trains, you know that this latch-up is one of the most boring engine configurations that you could possibly catch on a train on Norfolk Southern. And after being further bored by seeing this power, I said, let's go to Inman and see what else is going on there. So we barely managed to catch the intermodal, but we also see another train that is slowly exiting the yard after getting some work done. And although I usually don't know trains that run through this area, this one actually happened to be NS242, which is a manifest intermodal or manimodal train that runs on my home line of the Greenville District. One of the biggest reasons I love coming to Inman is because there is practically always something going on, even if there isn't something running on the main line by the yard. For instance, we got the slug power here, we have some random parked manifest, we have locomotives running in the back shops over there. Like there's always some action that's going on over here. And speaking of action, I once again get jump scared by a train, as while I'm filming the intermodal go by the yard, some random local move with the SC60E coming through just decides to appear, spawns out of nowhere. Once the head end of this local move had cleared me, I didn't really see anything else coming by, so I decided to visit a location that I've never been to before. CSX's Tilford Yard, or at least what used to be Tilford Yard. This place is not what it used to be. I got a lot more footage of all the places I went to today. That'll come out in a later video. You can tell that CSX technically still owns the property with the railroad ties and some of the maintenance equipment that was on the side. But yeah, this place definitely is not what it used to be. We can actually see action in Inman Yard while we're over here. And additionally, we can see action from a rail manufacturing plant that I did not know was there until I rode my bike right by through it. What a nice surprise. Fortunately, though the CSX property is not what it used to be, it is not completely dead, as my attention was soon drawn to the distant rumble of a Chivo. I looked in the distance, saw headlights, zoomed in, and realized that this is a Herzog train, which is used to carry ballast, the rocks that go beneath the rails. At the speed that it was crawling, it was clear to me that this thing was stopping. I didn't know for how long, but I eventually did see the conductor come out and apply the handbrake, so I knew that he was tying down for sure. As the Norfolk Southern operations at the plant continue as they're doing whatever they're doing to the rails, the crew begins to secure the CSX consist as it sits and awaits for a new crew. Shifting positions, we can see the type of consist that this train is. We got two locomotives on front, a GE ES44AH and a CSX ST70 Mac, and behind these two units are a long string of Herzog containers, which aren't technically fully empty, but I believe this would be classified as an empty train by what they classify as a loaded train. The history of Tilford still remains, as these signals, which are probably older than you and me, still serve the railroad to this day. I eventually started to make my way back to Inman, observing some of the intermodal operations that they have at the facility. I went back to the bridge, noticed the tail end of a train. I looked it up on the camera. There wasn't anything really special on there. What I do see as special are those two excavator loads on that park train over there. I didn't know what the idea was or what it was doing, but I knew it was there, so I said, maybe I'll see it. I was bored, so I continued my adventures to the tunnel that CSX runs under Inman Yard. This is the CSX Manchester sub that runs under the yard, and there is a tunnel on the opposite side, which I will not go to because going to that place is basically a death trap. CSX trains are often parked here as they work the facility that is actually right behind where we were at before at Tilford. And today was no exception. There was some random GE DPU that was just chilling here, chilling in this nice little scenic avenue. By the way, please don't go here. If I showed you where I was standing, don't go over here tonight. It's not worth the risk. Well, with nothing moving on the CSX Manchester, I went back to Inman to discover that the train I had seen parked with the Caterpillar loads had started to move. Pleasant surprise. So, got into position, got my camera out, and so it was filming time. These are just things I don't see at home for real. This train wasn't that much of a behemoth. Shortly after, the rear DPU came along, chugging as it helped push the train up to wherever it was going, and to whoever needed those Caterpillar loads. Following this train was a series of jump scare catches, if you will. First, a random CSX train came through with a rather tedious use of power on the head end. Then some high railer truck came through and ran by the parked freight train that was here when we first arrived in Inman. And then that parked freight train started moving. Once again, we have an uncommon find of me actually knowing what the train is in front of me. This is Norfolk Southern 154, and ironically, this train is literally leaving this yard to go work Chamblee Yard, which is at Norcross, Georgia. While I was filming this train, I looked behind me to see a string of BNSF locomotives. Now, based on the timing and the fact that it was BNSF power that was coming up, I had a good feeling that this was power for Norfolk Southern 240. This is a train that BNSF and Norfolk Southern interchange The loads technically come all the way from California and end up in Atlanta. 240 specifically is the run from Atlanta, Georgia to Charlotte, North Carolina. And having the suspicion that this power was coming out to 240, I definitely observed that there was a BNSF Executive SD70 Mac trailing on the rear. Now these aren't that uncommon on coal trains, but whenever it's on an intermodal train, it's a rather unusual sight, and people back home be going ballistic for these things whenever they come by. As our locomotive of interest slowly crawls by the yard, a mid-train DPU that is working a lot harder chugs right by me. And the jump scares will continue, as to the left, I saw in between the containers that some random yard power set was also moving alongside. So now it's like, stuff is just spawning back to back to back to back. The yard power set we won't be seeing again. However, just having the suspicion that that power was going to be at 240, I had a feeling that because they did not have any loads, they were going to go up to Hawaii and they were going to turn around and couple up to one of these strings of loaded well cars and spine cars that they have in the yard. So I said, let's go to Hawaii and see what we find. And sure enough, there they were. The ATL magic is strong today. The way that people be going crazy over these locomotives, and here one is just sitting in front of me. What a beautiful day this has turned out to be. Having the luxury of a SD70 Mac quite literally just sitting in front of me, I said that we might as well just take a close little look at the features and make a Mac a Mac. So on the front, we can see that this thing does indeed have an isolated cab. It possesses HTCR trucks. It's a K3LA horn, because of course it's the BNSF, and of course has the green and I guess you could say vanilla executive scheme painted on the locomotive body. This locomotive sat here for a little bit while the conductor walked to the rear end. Then they pulled out in front of the switch and they were preparing to reverse back into the yard. And I'm not gonna lie, I was ready to finesse y'all in this moment. I had planned that when they were gonna back up, I was gonna make it seem like this executive Mac was actually leading a train. I was about to clickbait the mess out of this. And then I hear a distant rumble. I look to my left, and what would you know? Another train came. I'm not gonna lie, I am definitely spoiled if I'm thinking that seeing another train is an issue. I think that having too many trains is a pretty good problem to have if you're a person of my interest. But unfortunately, my clickbaiting ventures did not succeed, because as this train was coming by, our executive Mac and the two of the BNSF locomotives started slowly reversing back into Inman Yard. As 240's power continues to traverse off in the distance, the DPU of this auto-rack train rumbles on by. I decided to shift positions to a business that lies right next to Hawaii, and our first train here would be some southbound intermodal with, what would you know, yet another standard boring GE lash-up. I made an interesting discovery when I came here, and that was of this old railroad bell. I don't know where this thing came from, how long it's been here, or what it's for, but I think it's a cool little homage to the railroad history that is definitely surrounding this area. And yes, I did indeed ring it. It does actually ring, and it's pretty loud. So that business, it was empty because it's an office and all the people are gone home. In the future, when there are people there, I don't ring it just to not disturb them and not try to start any trouble. As this intermodal train cleared its path, 240, now coupled up to its train, started to make its uphill chug out of Inman Yard as it continues north to its next destination, Charlotte, North Carolina. $2.40 today, per usual, had a typical mixture of foreign and local commodities. We can see up front 53-foot containers of the Bezos variety, in addition to other domestic carriers of goods across the United States. And behind this cut, we have a mixture of 48-foot and 45-foot containers of a more colorful variety, signifying their international origins. Today, this train was not that long, and before I knew it, the international cut was ringing up the tail end of the train past Hawaii. Right after this train had cleared, I noticed a green signal to my right, looked to my left, and realized that that horizontal train that we had seen before parked at Tilford had started to move. Evidently, they had found another crew. And you wouldn't believe it. As I looked to my left, I looked back to my right to see that there was another Norfolk Southern train coming up, entering Inman Yard as it ended its journey. Frankly, I was lost in a decision, but I decided that since the NS train was closer to me, I would focus on the CSX train and just catch these two trains rolling by each other in a near perfect meet. We could see our CSX Herzog train go off into the distance through a very conveniently placed set of empty rail cars near the front of the Norfolk Southern train. Your eyes did not deceive you. I actually managed to catch the second red main unit. That's both of these units, the only two that have those paint scheme, right in front of me, and I didn't even know those were coming today. Because of how long and insane this lash-up was, I knew that this had to have been 24A. For whatever reason, this train always has ridiculous power, and today was absolutely no exception. Once again, we have another certified Atlanta magic moment, as we have two different trains from two different railroads running together in the same spot with no warning. This next part I didn't catch on film, so let me explain to you what happened. So while I was sitting here filming 24A after the C6 train had passed, I began hearing some EMD rumble. And I'm thinking to myself, it's probably some local power. You can't see it from here, but there are dummy industries that are sitting around Howell. So I was thinking, it was probably CSX working one of those industries. However, I wanted to at least get a look of maybe just a glimpse of whatever was moving. So I went back to Howell because it's at a higher elevated position compared to the business that I was originally sitting at. And I see the top of a SD70 Mac. Bruh. Yeah. So I refused to go out on an L like this and raced myself all the way back to Howell. Saw 24A continuing to go into the yard, missed some freight train that was coming in, and as I got to the bridge, I barely managed to grab the CSX EMB, leading an empty coal train past Inman Yard. And with this train, I, very exhausted and dehydrated, it was like 100 degrees outside today, and the one bottle of water I had brought completely evaporated. I left after seeing this train, completely satisfied with all of the amazing action I had today. I hope you enjoyed this adventure, and as always, until next time, God bless. I'll see you soon, out on the high iron.